We ready? 1 minute? Okay. We're just about ready. Okay. If I can get your attention, I'm Jim Talone for Stone Harbor Museum. This is Graham Huber for Stone Harbor Museum. And you don't see him here, but Harlan Radford had a lot to do with this. He's a retired school teacher out in Ohio who spent about 15 years here as a kid and fell in love with the place and has been writing. If you follow it all, he's done postcards. And Graham's an expert on postcards, and so is Harlan. I'm not. I'm just sort of tagging on here. Anyway, I think we have one of these that's not a postcard, you said, but the others are all postcards. Little background on postcards. I think they started about 1890. 1905, Harlan dug up. 7 billion of them were printed worldwide. 1905. Over 1 billion were sent in the United States that year. And I don't know who counted them all, but it was a really big thing. And part of it was, we're 35 years from the Civil War. There was money. There's things happening there. People started traveling. Trains were terrific. Before you could get down here, I think in 2.5 hours on a train, which in those days was phenomenal. And then once you're here, they had a little bit of money, and the train would come in here, and they would go buy postcards from
Troxels or any of the stores.
And even very early, there were postcards. And then once the Risley brothers started, they were salesmen. Yeah. They didn't have Facebook; they had postcards. Yeah. And they made a postcard of every single building that went up almost. Yeah. So much of our story comes from that. Let's see. We claimed this was our idea. Now, okay. This is a very early postcard. Now, you can tell from the words there that something has already started, but it gives you that shot of the horse and buggy and the dunes. That 1900, a little bit. Sorry about that. In 1900, most of this island was just sand and grass and bayberry and dunes. There was, I think, in about 1895, there might have been 7 houses in Stone Harbor, and we'll see a couple of those as they went on. The island had been undeveloped. It was the last developed island. Obviously, Cape May had been developed in way back, 1690. Hopefully, we're going to do a story on that later. But 1690, and then it was a tourist destination from 1800 on. Huge hotels and things like that. Wildwood had grown up. Atlantic City had grown up. Sea Isle, I guess, maybe in that order. I don't know whether Ocean City came in there. And then very late, it's 1890 when Stone Harbor starts getting developed. So our history is really not very long.
Like the last 100 or so years.
Yeah, a little bit more than 100 years.
If you read the early brochures that the Risley brothers put out, they talk about this fabulous wide beach and then this big barrier of dunes, and then behind it, these salt ponds and marshes. So they leveled everything, took all the trees, all the vegetation out, and what the island looks like today is thanks to them. I mean, it's flat, level, there's no little salt ponds or water anywhere, and then you'll see in later pictures they started laying out the streets. So this is around, and they bought it in 1892 from the previous developers.
1907.
That's right.
The Risley brothers.
That was when they
There was
developed
another
the first
outfit
one.
that had bought the...
in 1892.
Yeah. in 1892. Let's see here.
And that's what they built in 1892. The Stone Harbor Improvement Company built that, and you'll see behind it one of the apartment buildings that's still standing, and then across the street the Sassafras, and then there's another one that's still standing, Rumbles and Sassafras. So this was the end of the town, which was oriented to the 80s, because the train stopped up in that area of town, and so the initial developers were in that part. So was the Abbotsford Inn, and then the Harbor Inn, and then was torn down.
Right. This was about 60, a capacity of like 60 or something, which was big and it was spacious. I read somewhere that it was $12 a week to rent. And the whole downstairs was open areas. And then in the basement, it was different working things. Sometimes the working men stayed there. And actually, when the Risleys did buy in 1907, they changed this to the Harbor Inn and probably used it for their workmen. There weren't really a lot of places to stay here in those days. Mm. You know, there was...
And you'll see early ads that says open all year. I wonder if you came down in February if you would have found a bed, but that's how they advertise themselves. The windmill is to pump water for the... Yeah.
There was no waterworks at this time.
Right.
The train had come in. The train came in, I heard, when there were 7 houses on the entire island. 7 houses. You know, those guys, they were the top end of technology, and they figured wherever they put a train station, people were going to come. And they did. And they did.
Yeah, they streamed down.
This, though, was put up, I think they used barges to bring the wood across. You know, there was no bridge that you could travel across except the one railroad bridge way back on Townsend's Inlet. Let's see. Life-saving station. You want to talk about that?
I don't know when that was built, but that was one of the earliest. So it's the same time it was getting going. It was moved from...
It was moved from
more the middle of the island?
Probably 80th.
Yeah.
It was, I think, a little further back, and it didn't look like this. I don't know that we did one of these on the life-saving stations, but this was big business too. Any ship coming up and down the coast was liable to get blown onto the coast. A nor'easter comes in with 40 or 50 mile-an-hour winds, and if you're not more than 2 or 3 miles off the coast, you might get pushed in. Yeah. So that was happening constantly, and in 1850, hundreds of people died, and the government finally started funding these things. Stone Harbor got its first 2 in 1875. We have some old pictures of that. If you look here, look around, you can see, you know where you're looking out towards the bird sanctuary. Yeah. There were also wild cattle on the island at that time. Wild cow is not something you mess with. This is not, Guernsey or something like that. So they did a lot of rescuing up and down the coast. That back here, I read an account in 1895. When you asked if there were people there, they said 50 people came out from the island, and I don't know where all they would have been, to watch a rescue right off of 83rd Street. The ship had gotten stuck 300 yards out, and they had trouble getting to it. And one guy drowned, and they managed to rescue the others. But that was a big part of the Stone Harbor history, this life-saving.
So that's one of the early buildings, Rummel's store. It still exists as an apartment building to this day, That's the back of the Harbor Inn. So you're on 83rd looking towards the beach and towards First Avenue.
You can see a little bit of the size of it, five stories.
Yeah.
It was a big thing. 83rd Street was the heart of the island in those days. It wasn't 96th Street, it was 83rd.
Right. That was,
You know, where Bud's is.
yeah.
What's the other, there was a candy store there.
Oh, right on 3rd Avenue on the Basin. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget the name of that. But up and down that street was, you know, the center of Stone Harbor. Pam and I had an apartment up here. The top has changed. There was a fire, I forget when. But basically, it looks like they might have added on a little bit. It's still there. It's still a solid place. We didn't know the date. We had heard 1895. And sometimes it's hard to verify when something was built. They know when the land was sold maybe, but they don't know that. Harlan Radford did some research, and he dug up this picture, and it turned out that this is the Temple Guard. So he looked up the Temple Guard. Russell Conwell, anybody here go to Temple University? Me too. He was a Civil War vet, and he was a minister, and he gathered these kids together, and they were going to train them military stuff. Well, 1895, they came down here from July 12th to the 26th or something like that, did maneuvers. So we know that they were here only one time, 1895. So this building has to have been there at least in 1895, maybe 1894, because it was used as the post office till 1910.
You'll notice as you look at postcards, it'll say Diller's Colonial Store and Post Office. The post office moved all over town. That may well be the first location, but it moved many times before it finally landed where it's been probably for the longest.
Yeah, this I think was fairly common when a town was growing up. You know, somebody's house or the largest house or something, and this was another large house. By the way, there was a big one on the corner too, across the street that has disappeared that I don't know anything about.
No, that one's gone. But the other one on this side of the street is still there.
Let's see. This is one of my favorites. How about you?
So this shows you what the Risleys did. They laid curb. In another picture, there's sewer pipe just stacked up. The sassafras house that we were talking about is just out of view. That's the one that was across from
At
it.
83rd and
So that's
2nd.
Yeah, that house is 83rd and 2nd. So you're looking north from the train station towards the very end of Stone Harbor, and it shows you the different ethnicities and the different people who came here to work. Once it was leveled, then they started putting in the infrastructure, curbs, sewers, sidewalks, laying out the 25-foot lots by 110, and you had to buy 2. So that's when they started with the infrastructure, all done by humans and mules.
Yeah.
This pretty much predates like steam engines and steam machinery that they have on the island at the time. This was handwork.
Right. I mean, there's a couple other things here. One, the black community, right here, this guy probably was living down on 81st Street. I don't know how many of you saw the movie on the 81st Street. Is it worth seeing?
Yes.
Yeah. That's on YouTube if anybody wants to see it. But this community was very strong, mostly built out of laborers who valued education, took a good good advantage of the education on the island, and the kids, you know, many of them went on to teachers, lawyers, doctors. What else? I also like the fact that the train is here. And it's hard to believe, but the train had been coming in here at this point. If we assume this is 1908, 9, the train had been coming in since 93. 93, pardon me, 93. They had put it from Sea Isle They knocked it down a couple times, or the weather knocked it down, and they put in a big looping bridge. They came across, and then it came right down the center of the island. There's no road.
Right.
It was just a railroad. But you would come here to, oh, there's the station. That was at 86th Street. It's not the concrete house, the big white house, you know?
Yeah.
Everybody think it looks like a train station. It does.
Yeah.
It's not. That was put up in 1909. So that train had been coming in here at this point for 15 years or so.
Which train line was it?
What started out as, it was called the West Jersey Railroad, but they kept merging, but that's the route it came in from.
I think it was a
CILC.
subsidiary of Pennsylvania Railroad, because when the line came in from the courthouse, that was the Reading line.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume, I don't know the real history of the two of them, but I think that they were competitors.
Yes.
So anyway, the train's coming and it's headed back out, and to this day, I have no idea how it turned around. I was told that somebody came in here as a kid and remembers that it backed across the bridge.
Right.
So,
That it, you know, my father told me, who was here in 1918, that the train would come and sit on 2nd Avenue, and it'd be 3 or 4 blocks long, that he as a 4 or 5-year-old would have to crawl underneath it or through it to get to the beach. Now, I don't know if that's true or not.
well, it kind of was a problem because my grandmother built her house in 1929, and she would say we could never open the windows because the soot from the train, from the engine running. So it kind of bisected the town and with the soot, and it caused some issues. So crawling under it doesn't surprise me, especially a young boy. Yeah. I would have.
I never realized the wrong side of the tracks was the wind. All across America, when they built the small towns, the train would come in, and the wind would blow the soot and the ash, and sometimes the sparks, on one side. So that was the least desirable side. Now here, I guess it changed around and stuff. But, they're doing work that's not unlike what they do today. Mm-hmm. You set up a form, you pour the concrete, right. Except they mix the concrete right there. You can see what they're doing. Okay.
So I wanted this one put in because everybody talks about coming by train, but you could also get here by boat. And they went into the 85th Street boat landing. This was right where the Reeds is. That red roofed is the Island Water Sports today. The house looks very much the same. So the Nellie Bly came there. And then at the end of 96th Street, just before you get to the bridge, was something called the Parkway Pavilion. And boats tied up there. And the Risleys one summer got 2 boats from Ocean City that they tied up there, and you could go by boat to Ocean City for an excursion. So you could get onto the island other ways. So you can't drive until 1912 when the bridge is open, but you could come by rail, and then there were other ways to come by boat. So people would go to Anglesey by train and come over by boat, or they'd take that to Wildwood for an excursion, but there were other ways to get on the island other than the railroad before you could drive on. So that's representing one of the many boats.
Quiz for you. Nellie Bly. Who's Nellie Bly?
Boat from Anglesey.
Huh?
It's parked in Anglesey.
No, but who was Nellie Bly?
She was a newspaper
Oh.
Yep.
reporter.
What'd she do?
I read about her, but I can't remember.
Yeah, she was an investigative reporter.
Yeah,
Supposedly went into an asylum.
that's right. That's right.
Had herself committed.
That's right. Exposed the conditions of.
Yeah, and then wrote about it.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody that's interested in women who break the rules, check out the name Ella Reeve Bloor, about the same time, who did absolutely incredible things all her life. But that's a different story. That was in a different movie. But yeah, I got to ride on this one when I was like years old. My mother took an excursion to Wildwood, Anglesey.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of fun. I don't know that it lasted much longer than that. I know the first teacher that came into Stone Harbor to teach in our schools at the, I forget what the cottage was where they taught.
Oh, the Oaks.
The Oaks Cottage. She came in by horse and buggy, and then she would take a boat across and then walk to the school. So that's the Nellie Bly.
So we talk a lot about the Risleys. That's where one of the four Risley brothers settled. And Hydrangea was the name he gave it, and it was a bed and breakfast for years, and only recently was torn down. But they lived right next to the Harbor Inn. And you can see here they're getting along with the sewer and the water lines. We talked about Rumble's store. That's the one directly behind. The other one was on the corner of 83rd and 2nd on the far side.
Mm-hmm.
So that's looking back at this development. And that was Stone Harbor until the Risleys started pulling it more towards 96th Street and other things got built. But that's where we started in the low 80s with that hotel. And
Right, so the Abbotsford Inn, or at this point the Harbor Inn, and Reese Risley's, Hydrangea, the Sassafras House, and this house that we don't know much about that didn't make it. This is an example, by the way, of one of the. They were constantly putting up these pictures of houses being built. Mostly the really nice houses. They didn't have it. Well, no, they did.
oh,
some
they
of
did.
They pushed the bungalow colony.
They
too.
did the bungalows. They did the double houses, the one that's behind the Wawa that burned down, that they rebuilt exactly the way.
Right.
They did pretty much every building. I think that house there and maybe 4 or 5 others that I know date from this period don't have postcards, but every other structure at the time does. So they were, and I'm sure they were distributing them free, mailing them out to whoever, because a lot of times on the back, it's got a message, the new stuff, and then their address in Philadelphia where you could go pick up a brochure about the development, and then they would mail them to whoever asked. So
I forget where I read this, and I can't put my finger on it, but there was a story there about a guy who came down on 83rd Street before this was up, before the Risleys. He had been out drinking with his buddy, and the buddy says, "Hey, there's an excursion going down to Stone Harbor. Let's go. It's $1." Okay, he comes down, they get off at Piermont, they walk up to 83rd Street, there's a little cafe there. This is like 1893, 4. He winds up buying a lot, which was probably $50. Maybe he put $5 down. And I don't know what happened after that. He was a young guy, and he wasn't a big guy with money coming out of his pockets. This was just, but it was a time to make money. And I think, the streets were paved with gold really was true for a lot of them in those days.
So one of the things they did was make sure there was all kinds of entertainment on the island. So we had the yacht club. That was the country club, which for years sat in Burdett Tomlin's parking lot and is basically now where the overpass is. Because when Burdett Tomlin wanted more parking, they gave it to the Cape May County Museum, and it is now their library. So that building was preserved, but it was out there, and it was part of an enormous development that was called the Stone Harbor Ocean Parkway. So our boulevard coming into town was supposed to be much wider. There were 2 Venetian canals on either side where houses would line it, boats would be going up and down, and you'd out the courthouse to play golf, tennis, whatever kinds of things they could. And they even said, if the island life isn't for you and you'd like a house with a little more land where you could garden, they were developing a little plot of land in Cape May Courthouse where they would say you could go live off the island, but come on quickly on the little train that came in on the Stone Harbor Boulevard. So they put out postcards like this, and they show that you can bathe, motorboating, sailing, run your motor on the beach. That was a big thing. Both automobiles and motorcycles were raced on the beach constantly. They're playing tennis, fishing, and she's golfing. So it isn't just a day at the beach. It isn't just lying out in the sun. There's all kinds of activities. And this taps into everybody's fascination with speed and racing to get down here, races on the beach. That was a big pastime, and so Stone Harbor bought into that quickly.
Yeah, we've sort of grown up with the time where speeds are pretty much the same. You know, when I grew up, you could still drive 60 or 80 miles an hour. You know, airplanes were the same speed they are now, basically. But at that time, they're seeing this is incredible, what's happening. You know, this is a motorboat. There were a lot of races and stuff like that. Here you have the third concrete house in town. That was a thing, what's his name was pushing out? Edison.
Edison, yeah.
Edison was trying to push concrete houses. It never really took off, but there's still two left, the one at 86th and the one at 100th.
Yeah, and there's a photograph of Edison standing next to a model, and it looks exactly like that house.
Really?
It's
You
exactly.
think he came down?
No, I think whoever built that used Edison's shape. No, he's just standing next to a model, probably in his laboratory.
$30,000 yacht club. 19. Who's a yacht club member here? I don't know why the yacht club today doesn't date back to 1910. But they go to
it went out of business. Yeah.
It went out of business for a little bit.
Oh,
Right before the Depression.
yeah.
Right
It was
before the
closed
crash.
for quite a while. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the same building.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
But it used to be the Stone Harbor Yacht Club.
and now it's the Yacht Club of Stone Harbor.
Oh,
well, there you go.
So that's
That makes it a big difference.
there you go.
How many remember this?
Yeah, somebody.
Yeah.
So this is a big moment in Stone Harbor's history because it doubles the number of hotel rooms, and it orients you away from the 80s now to 96th Street. Because you'll see in the next postcards when the Risley's opened the bridge, they wanted everything to be oriented to 96th Street. And one of the things they made sure of was that there was a great big modern hotel that opened just as the bridge did.
You know what just hit me? Railroads had a habit of coming into a town and not landing where you expected them to land. They would buy land either side of the main area and then put the rail across there, which would become the center of town. So the first center of town is sort of left. And I wonder if the Risley brothers bought up they owned it.
Well, in their promotional materials, they say to get back to Philadelphia, you've got to go all the way up the island, across that horseshoe bridge over the Townsend's Inlet, and they say there were months last summer when it was even closed. And then you'd have to go on a local...
Unlike today.
Yeah, I know, but could you imagine that happening today? And then you'd take sort of a local train all the way up whereas if you just went out the 96th Street Bridge, right out to Courthouse, and got an express Reading train to Philadelphia, you could be home and down quicker. So that was why they thought, we're at the end of a long train line. Why not have a really short little one to the express tracks that had been there now, because they opened that bridge in 1911, 1912. Those tracks have been out there for 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
Going down
The first
the
railroad
mainland.
got to
So that was why
Cape
they...
May in 1860s.
Yeah, so
During
they,
the war, I think sometime they got to the 60s. So it's just running a spur off of that.
Yeah, and I guess they looked at the marshes and thought, well, there's a terminal in Cape May Courthouse, so we could have express service, and that is why they oriented the town down away from what became just then very residential.
Yeah, this was, did I have anything to say with it? 60 rooms, dining room, rooftop gardens, opened August 1st, 1912. Stayed up until 1960 when it got torn down. I think it didn't have air. I don't think it had heating. So, I mean, it was kind of limited what they were doing. But it was center. This is where you had the lifeguards ball every year.
Yeah.
It had a bar, it had a dining room, had music. I have a minute coming out Anybody remember 1952? The band was Bill Haley's Comet. Well, before he was with the Comets.
Yeah.
They named it later. But yeah.
Well, I heard that there was a severe storm came through and they had to condemn that building because it had some structural damage to it.
I don't know. I hadn't heard that.
I heard that was a storm that did structural damage.
Well, I think it might have been a combination of things. The storm and it needed repair anyway.
Yeah,
You know, in 1960 we're into new stuff.
yeah.
So, this
So
is a shot of the crowds.
This is launching modern Stone Harbor when everything opened. The bridge, 2 churches, and trains just kept coming down with people for what they called Gala Week. They had races on the beach. There was a foot race up by Abbotsford Inn, and they promoted it heavily with postcards like this saying, you know, come down for the opening. So the Ocean Parkway opened, the 2 churches. Woodrow Wilson, the governor of the state, came to open the bridge. So this was
Right.
a big deal.
And I think they had, and well, here you can see the carriage comes to take your luggage and stuff to wherever you're going to go.
That's like 4 years after the Risleys bought. They're now opening a bridge, have
Yeah.
a modern hotel. There's churches. People are building houses, although still very few.
Yeah.
And that is,
This is the
The
shot
procession.
of the bridge, the first bridge opening. This was a huge day. I think 2 churches at least opened the day before, I believe, St. Paul's and the Episcopal Church, St. Mary's, opened the same day. The Lutheran Church didn't open for a few years, I believe.
later.
But, you know, this was huge. This parade started in Cape May Courthouse. Dr. LeBeau gave us some pictures, and one is a shot of the parade starting at the courthouse and then coming down. But it wasn't just from the courthouse, because there's an account that a whole caravan came down from Philadelphia, an automobile caravan. It was a big deal. Well, first of all, you had to have a thing. The second part, probably the caravan. When my father came down in 1918, he said that they used to practice. It was not at all unusual to have 2 or 3 flats on the way, because the roads weren't real good.
no.
It was that way in the 50s too.
Yeah. and you had to go through the small towns and stuff like that. But this was a gala day, probably, this is the biggest event in Stone Harbor history.
Yeah, and I would imagine the Risleys sold a lot of their bonds that were attached to lots that day,
Yeah.
or that weekend.
And by the way, 1911, Stone Harbor was not a town at that point.
No.
That didn't happen until May of 1914. Marshall R. Reed, are you a Marshall R. Reed fan?
Only, I know a little bit, but if you fill in.
Marshall, I did some research. We did a little short movie on this, a 5-minute thing. He's a credible guy. He was 25 years old. I think his father must have been rich. He sent him out to Ohio to buy an airplane, a 1911 Wright Brothers B airplane, probably for $1,000. Wilbur wouldn't let him take it until he had trained him to fly. And he just had different adventures and stuff like this. He's really a fascinating guy, but he got the contract to run the airmail for the first time. They were trying it. It didn't take right away, but this was one of the first tries. It wasn't the first. That went from Ocean City. He brought his plane down on he pulled it behind his car, put it together onto the beach, loaded it up with mail, and flew over to here. And did it like 4 days in a row. And what do I have on that? I had something like 12,000 pieces of mail were taken between the two. On the last day, they carried 5,000 postcards. You find one today, you can make some money off it.
because they have a special stamp, and they're quite rare.
Yeah.
But as an example of the Risley's at work again, they heard of this happening and said, land on our beach. So they were always trying to find some event or promotion to come to the town to put it on the map. And an airplane landing on the beach, anyone in town went down to see it. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure they all bought a postcard and had it mailed. So it was a big deal.
We have some pictures of other airplanes that have landed on the beach, not just the ones with towing the thing
The tow ones.
where they crash, but they have landed on the beach. Boardwalk.
So a couple of years after finally getting the bridge in and getting it going, the Risleys put in a boardwalk that ran from 106 down to
83rd.
to 83rd. So this shows most of the major buildings on it. You'll see another picture later, but that was the auditorium at 106th Street with a fishing pier. The green and red brick building was called the casino, although it had no relation to gambling of any sort. It was basically an apartment or a hotel. After the boardwalk was destroyed, they simply put steps on that side and you just entered from the back because it survived the storms of the 1940s and made it to 62.
What? No.
The casino.
Oh, the casino did. Yeah, not the boardwalk.
No, but once the boardwalk was gone, they just oriented themselves towards land and kept on going. That green roofed house is the cement one on 100th Street.
And you can see the beauty of the beach, and then people would hang on the other side of the beach too. And this stayed up until the storm of 44 knocked it down. And then I would love to know some research of what happened because they didn't rebuild it. They rebuilt it in 1920 when it was knocked down. 44 came along, they walked away from it.
Yeah.
That was a big walk away and really had a lot to do with, I think
Yeah.
42 had, but the fact that it was 44?
When the war. When the war, it's World War II that line of
The materials, yeah.
materials,
yeah.
maybe manpower. Everybody's fighting
Yeah.
overseas, all the men.
Yeah, but everybody else rebuilt theirs because a lot of them went down at that time.
Oh,
So,
But I wonder if that ties into your they
this is part of that pier that went out. There was an auditorium there. When we talk about, is that next? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go back and forth between these two. These are the bungalows. Okay, 100 and, what is it, 9th, 8th and 9th. The three, Bower Court, Weber, and then Stone was later. I don't know who built them. The Risleys didn't build things. They sold the land for them.
Mm-hmm.
They helped the development of it, I think. What was I going to say? Oh, the Stoneman's Foundation, right about this time, 1910 or something, a foundation started in Philadelphia run by a Dr. Stone, who was a minister. They first started meeting in the basement of his church. When that got too big, they met at Penn. Then they met in the Convention Hall. They grew to about 100,000 members within like 4 or 5 years, made enough money that they sent an ambulance battalion to the war in Europe in 1917. And they bought 50 of these supposedly. And they, this is a place for the people from Philadelphia to come down and get out. That they charged $8, $4 or $8 a week. Of course, they were 12 by 24.
Yeah.
For those of you that have been in them. Part of the idea was that they were going to bring people down and educate them. Part of the Chautauqua, what do you call that?
Well, it's like a
Education thing.
like a speaking,
Cultural
yeah, a speaker
speaking,
series. And,
the idea of moving up, educate yourself. I think they developed this. Of course, also notice the dress code back then. at the beach, coat and tie, you know. That's
So
the way
they're
it was.
just finishing up with the boardwalk and this, and apparently the Stoneman used the auditorium that was at the back or in the middle.
Yeah, and we don't know an awful lot about that.
There aren't a lot of pictures of that either.
No, which is a little surprising.
David Troxel. So that building is still here, has been here. It was an ice cream parlor forever. David Troxel was one of the early, although there were others, sold them actively in his store. Many of the ones you'll see say published by Troxels, and so he was part of the promotion of the town by penny postcards, although probably by the time they were more than a penny to mail at this point, but he was a big publisher.
Wouldn't have been more than 2 cents if it
No.
was.
So that's still exactly in the same spot. That apartment building is there. The post office is on the green.
Harlan Redford has a postcard, I don't know whether it's this one, that's signed by Mr. Troxel, and he sent a postcard to the people who make them, and he wanted to know what it would cost him to get, I don't know, 10,000 or 1,000 of copy of each one of those. And then this was located right at 96th Street. They come in on the train, they get off to go to the beach, you can get ice cream, you can get a postcard. So it was good business where he was.
That's a later view. It was a shingle building that one of the postcards I have, there's nothing around in it. It's just shingles.
This building is still here.
That's still there. The second floor was open. That was enclosed later. And my mother remembers Emma Troxel sitting out there, their daughter, who I don't think went out much. And she would sit up there and just watch people go by. So that would be the 30s and 40s.
Whoops, sorry about that. Let me get back to my postcards. This is an interesting one for a couple of reasons of the trains here. And that's a closer up version of the same, it's the same one. The water tower, you see, but notice the trolley. The train here, the trolley here. The trolley was the one that went out to the courthouse. The train went the long way, all the way up. This was fairly active. I think they talked about, I don't know, 5,000 people a month when it was at its peak. It didn't last all that long, and it was owned by a couple different people. It was a 3-mile railroad. One of our stories on the movie there is that the owner of the railroad was out in Wyoming, and he's on a big train, and the conductor, he goes to the conductor, or no, the guy who's got the bunks that you're going to. What do you call them? The porter. The porter.
Oh.
He goes to the porter and he says, "You got to treat me well. I'm president of a railroad." And the guy has a book, and he goes and he looks it up, and he says, "You're Mr. I forget what his name was. You're president of Stone Harbor Railroad." "Yes, we'll treat you, very well." It had 3 employees. It was 3.5 mile long railroad, but it was a Stone Harbor Railroad. That had different owners and things. Here you can also see the boardwalk is still there, and the train, possibly like I was talking about, parked, and you have to get through it or around it if you wanted to go around. And notice the green again on 96th Street. This is probably 1928 or something.
Anybody good with early cars? You could see.
It's hard to tell with
Yeah.
the cards. Yeah. How about this? Anybody ever seen? Nobody's ever seen it this way.
Yeah, this is a good example of, we have all kinds of interesting postcards of the boardwalk, and you'll notice it's looking south, and then there's marshes on this side of the boardwalk, and you think, well, that's the Atlantic Ocean. So they took a lot of license. This is an idealized view. Probably someone had the image and thought, well, maybe the nuns have a garden around. So it's a very stylized view of Villa Maria, which for years was sort of the end of Stone Harbor, and there wasn't much developed beyond it with the exception of the life-saving station.
Right, which you couldn't get to there was
By
no
se-
First Avenue, there
Yeah.
was no Second Avenue.
Right.
You had to go out to Third Avenue to do this. And the thing that blows my mind is they put that up, I believe, from November to March of 1937 or 8. 4 months, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would probably have been the biggest, it's probably bigger than Shutter Haven, I think.
Much.
Probably the biggest
Much.
thing on the island. The one they're putting up now is a pretty good size too. So, this is taken from the water tower. We think what, 46 or 7 you said?
I would say anywhere from 1947 to 1950, which gives you an idea. Like we started with the 1890s and nothing on the island. This is kind of, I would say, the triumph of Diller and Fisher, as you see the line of Cape Cods just going up 2nd Avenue. And if anyone owns a house and knows when it was built, it might date it. But this is, still shows the Nautilus, so it's before 62 anyway.
Right.
But this shows you what happened to the railroad. So now we have this lovely wide street with islands down the middle because the railroad is long gone. And this shows you the development as it marches towards where the Abbotsford Inn started.
And you can't quite see it there, but it ended at 80th Street. Ted, you want to say anything about the island?
I see my house.
Huh?
Where is
It's
it?
always fun to see houses.
Second and second.
We've got some great aerial photos that show at different times. Ted Burke from the back there did some research. Bud Corson, who was the engineer after his father was. Bud, I guess, went in through the 60s and into the 70s. Did you know him, Sue? Neat guy. But he talked about this. This was a WPA project, 1938, which makes sense. Where would they get the money to do this? They were pretty broke here. And then if you notice the concrete that goes around them, it's slatted. By the way, that's been there since 1938. That's pretty good concrete. But the idea of the slatting was that it would reflect light from the headlights. That sounds a little fishy to me, but that's what he said, and he should know better than anybody. And then you can also see how much green there still was. How many empty lots in those days. You could have bought a lot in those days, probably less than $1,000.
Yeah. And then we just ended with this to sort of bring us right up to June 24th, 1949, with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, a new release movie. That was the day the harbor opened. They have not yet cut the ribbon, but they are about to. It was the first show was at 6:30. And 1949, June 24th. And so
Before this, you had the park,
down
but
further.
this was, I don't know if they charged different price. This was so much classier, as I recall. The park was sort of a basic movie theater, you know, the box, and this had, I can remember going in and taking off my flip-flops and walking on the rug because it was so plush.
Yeah.
You know, and that was in the late 50s.
So that takes us up to sort of where we stopped with the postcards.
Yeah,
So
takes us up to about 1950. How about questions on any of these? We took a little longer than we had thought.
You had said that the big hotel was knocked down in 1960, right?
Shelter Haven.
What, Shelter
Yeah.
Cove. Was that property vacant all those years?
No.
What was there after
There was
that?
a motel with a liquor store underneath it.
a modern.
Shelter Haven Motel. There was also a, what was the room?
The Bayview dining room.
No, there was it was a nightclub. Touche. There you go.
I still have a car.
Okay. Touche was sort of for the wild people.
But that,
Store
that
was on the corner, right
yep,
on the corner.
right on the corner. That was replaced by a 2-story with rooms facing 3rd Avenue and rooms facing the bay, and it looked like
It looked like a motel.
typical 1960s beach doo-wop motel, which
And how long
lasted,
was that there?
Till I believe 98 or 9.
and then sat empty
And it sat till about,
That was it. So,
for many years.
You know when the,
just sitting
till
there.
10 or 15 years until
Motel came down?
the current place.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know
A friend of
when.
mine used to work for General Electric. He was in charge of all their North American real estate. And they own the mortgage on that piece of property. And at the time they took the old touches down, GE assigned that property a negative value. Because the bulkhead was in such bad shape and it was, you couldn't build anything on it. And they would have given it for $1 at the time.
Wow.
What year was that?
Well,
So
when Touche's came, after Touche's.
No,
came
what,
out,
I can't believe that. 1999, 98?
Yep.
I mean, it had to be worth more than that, just the land.
Well, I guess they figured that the repair work that needed to be done to
Yeah.
the bulkhead, I think that there was also some environmental remediation, maybe
Okay.
they buried oil tanks, I'm not quite sure, but they assigned it a negative value for their portfolio at the time.
Yeah, we didn't
Yeah.
really show the back side of the Shelter Haven, but that was a hot spot behind it with boats coming in and out. There used to be a float. There was a gas station across the street on it, but all sorts of boats. They used to have swimming races there. This was a really hub for the place. This was up,
Yeah, there's a party fishing boat there that,
Marty Hahn
yeah,
had a fishing boat that went out of there.
yeah.
Margine. I think a couple others, weren't there?
There were
At least two or three
I
of
think,
them
yeah.
that went out.
hmm
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Other questions? Anybody looking to do street work? We're always looking for historians. A lot of his questions we just don't know. I want to know how the town survived in the 30s when you had at least 250 houses that nobody was paying rent on, or nobody's paying taxes on. That big, the big house at 86th Street, the concrete house, sold I think for $1 in 1930. Yeah, and not a hell of a lot more in 1940. I think, 1,000 or two.
didn't they extend the town beyond 111th to sell property there so the town could come out of bankruptcy?
Very
I
much.
thought I heard that. In other words, the reason it got extended up to 118th or 121st or whatever it was, because the town needed the money otherwise, because they were bankrupt.
Okay,
Makes sense.
Hard to think of Stone Harbor bankrupt.
I know.
But
When you were talking about,
Yes.
fire.
well, I remember that in the early 70s.
That was the 70s.
There was an auction
Yeah.
for the properties, and I remember my father turning down because they wanted $25,000, and that was just a joke. If you bought one of those,
Yeah.
you'd be rich today. But
I thought they borrowed them, or they sold that because they wanted to, build the fire company or the waterworks or something? Didn't they want to build some of the things for the infrastructure of the town? And that's why they sold off down there and.
Very likely. It went to all kinds
Yeah.
of things. A new bulkhead. I mean, the 62
But they
storm
also-
did
yeah.
all that damage to the bulkheads.
well, they put that bulkhead all the way
It
out
was
to.
probably 75 or better.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted to go out, I think, to 124th or 5th.
Mm-hmm.
And then they ran into the EPA. Environmental stuff started coming up and moved
to
against
stop.
that. So, save the point.
Right.
I don't know much about that, except Lynn Picanza will talk about it.
They were
And
gonna build a new fire station and put in new
And that's
waterworks.
Okay.
where are they going to do it down there?
No, here.
No.
No.
Oh, up here.
That's why they.
Oh,
wanted
To
they
fund
did
it.
to-
To take the revenue to build a water system or put the water tower in and
That was our understanding.
Well, it may.
and
I
build a
don't know
new
that
Was
fire station.
my understanding that the firehouse was built entirely by volunteers and that the town didn't put money into it up until recently?
I
Does that?
I don't know that.
No.
Could
What
be.
we know was what was the general information.
Yeah.
It may not be factual. If you look into the books and things.
Now, you know, part of the fun of this job is you hear something like that and then you start digging.
Right, because
And you
probably
think,
in the
"Oh,
minutes
yeah.
somewhere, right?
Where's the truth? How do you find it? Yeah. So, any others?
If I can just
Yes.
quick plug for the museum.
Mm-hmm.
So we started something new this year. We have a children's story hour every Friday at 9 o'clock on Fridays. And it's super fun. We've got 2 ex-teachers who run it. And so if you have any children in your life or any friends with any children in your life, their lives is 2 to 12 years old. And then we also have this fabulous scavenger hunt that every week there's a new sponsor for the scavenger hunt. This week is Springer's.
Oh.
So somebody comes in, it takes about 15 minutes to do the scavenger hunt. Do the scavenger hunt, then they get a certificate for Springer's ice cream at the end. So pass the word. And starting on Saturday, new sponsor, Douglas Fudge. So, and it keeps going. So anyway, please pass it on.
I've been docing a couple times when the kids come in, and it's fun.
Yeah.
They keep moving, you know, and trying to find all this, and it is kind of neat. And they learn what's in the museum while they're doing it.
And the parents and grandparents like it too because they're looking around. So thank you. And
Okay.
thank you for being here.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you. There's refreshments back there.
I thought on that timeline back there on the wall showed where they increased the water capacity, changed the water tower, improved it on your timeline, on our timeline.